New and exciting changes are happening in the EVSC. With Harrison's new football stadium, several schools adopting uniforms, and the new North High School and Middle School on the north side, the EVSC is bringing on big change. One of the most important staff additions in the EVSC is Dr. David Smith, who in July 2011 replaced Dr. Vince Bertram as the EVSC superintendent. I recently had the pleasure to have a one-on-one interview with the new superintendent about the EVSC and the new North schools. Hello, Dr. Smith. My name is Justin Hebner. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Justin.
What made you want to work in the field of education?
Well, throughout my career in EVSC as a student, I had outstanding teachers and saw the impact that they had on students, and I wanted to be a teacher after I saw that.
How do you feel the school system has changed since you were a student?
When I was a student in EVSC, we had a lot of schools, but basically they had the same approach and the same opportunities for students. Now, some 35 years later, we have a ton of different options for students, and actually, I think every student in Vanderburgh County can find something that they would find very beneficial in our schools, be it a different type of school or a different program, such as the Community Link.
How do you feel about the new dress code that some of the schools have adopted?
I think school officials will tell you that it's been very beneficial for students, that we have seen academic outcomes from students improve. When I was the principal at Evans, the year actually before I left, we did survey parents and students decided that Dress for Success would be a good option for Evans Middle School. And unfortunately, I wasn't there to see the outcome, but I do know that the principals and parents and students alike do feel that it is very beneficial for students.
You mentioned you were a principal at Evans. What other positions have you held in the EVSC?
Well, for 19 years, I was a teacher. I was an instrumental music teacher at Balsey and at Wrights and at Tompkins. Then I became an assistant principal and a principal at Evans, and then I was the interim deputy superintendent. Eventually was the assistant superintendent for human resources and business affairs before I became superintendent of EVSC.
Are there any big changes coming to the EVSC that you could share with us?
Several of the goals that we have for EVSC would be, first of all, from a classroom perspective, the state has adopted Common Core state standards, so we certainly will be working with our schools and administrators and teachers to implement those Common Core standards, not only for this year but for the coming years. Also, we have a renewed focus on customer service, with customer service being for our students and also for our families. And then we also are instituting what's called Lean and Six Sigma. You will be hearing more about that in the coming days and months. Really, that's a way of doing business so that we can maximize all of our resources and drive those resources into the classroom.
After talking about his goals for the EVSC, I focused the remainder of my time with Dr. Smith discussing the new North Middle School and high schools. What was the reasoning in building the new North High School and Middle School on the north side of town?
The EVSC had a demographic study that was undertaken on our behalf, and it showed that the population trends and the building trends were certainly on the north side. When we looked at that analysis and then looked at also where the current buildings were within Vanderburgh County, there was a void of school facilities on the northern part of Vanderburgh County.
How will the high school and middle school students be separated during the day?
They have actually separate facilities for the vast majority of functions within this complex, but they do have one kitchen and then with satellite kitchens for the middle school students, junior high school students and the high school students. But we have one auditorium. We have separate band and orchestra facilities for the junior high and high school. We have separate phys ed facilities for both. But we have two libraries, one for the junior high students and one for the high school students.
What's the capacity of the high school and the middle school? How much could it hold?
The high school is designed to house 2,000 students, and the junior high is designed to house 1,000 students for a total of 3,000 students on this campus.
How is that different from each school that they're replacing?
Well, currently, North High School has a capacity of about 1,600 students, which it currently serves. So certainly it would have the capacity to serve additional students on this site. And the junior high concept actually did not exist before this complex. We had middle schools, and Evans Middle School, which served 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, as did Oak Hill Middle School. When we combined Oak Hill Middle School and Evans Middle School, we did not have the capacity for all the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, so we chose to go with the 7th and 8th grade, make this a junior high concept, and then the elementary schools in the North Attendance District now have K through 6th grades.
It would seem that there will be more bus routes needed. Is that a good assumption since the school's on the north side?
Well, that's a common thought because this complex is so far north, but quite frankly, more than 50% of the population that attends north lives in this area. So the bus routes probably will be about the same. We actually have 2 or 3 fewer routes this year than we did last year, but quite frankly, we will have fewer people traveling into Evansville proper than we will have from Evansville proper traveling to the new North Complex.
What's different about this facility than the facilities that it replaced?
Certainly it is a much more modern facility. It's much more efficient from energy usage. We also have over 125 acres on this campus, so all of the facilities that North students used before that may have been at different sites will now be housed on one campus. They have a football stadium, they have a football practice field, they have a band practice field. Used to be that the band would have to practice at Bosse Field. Now they can practice on their own campus and then walk right over to the football stadium and perform in the football stadium on this campus. Also has a complete array of baseball and softball and track, in addition to very modern science labs and just every amenity that we need in our modern schools for the benefit of our students.
Well, thank you for your time.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
The science rooms are fabulous. We have distilled water connected to our sinks in the front, which I've never had before. We have a vacuum set up in the front, which I hadn't got to play with before. We have chemical hoods and a lot of things that are normally just seen in a high school setting I get to have now at the junior high. So, and we have a ventilation system that's great, cabinets that I can't even fill up yet, I'm sure I will, that are still empty, which is wonderful, and lots of equipment that we can use that we're just not used to having. The sinks and the tables and the countertops even are just state-of-the-art, so very nice.
After our interview with Dr. Smith, we had the opportunity to tour the new middle school with Principal Ken Wimpy.
You'll notice the width of the hallways, they're exceptionally wide, and we did that for a purpose because in most middle schools they're not this wide and it gets very congested. You'll notice the size of the lockers are basically built like high school lockers, and we wanted a locker that's facilitated by students in a way that's going to give them opportunity to put a lot of their materials and things in there. This is one of our typical classrooms. One thing you'll see on here is a lot of windows, which means it has a lot of natural light that comes in. You can see that the desks and so forth are all structured so that students can place their work underneath if they need to be, and obviously you can see and view from the teacher's desk. You'll notice that each of the rooms has a Promethean board. All of the teachers in here have the Promethean board they use for instruction. It's one of the best tools I think that I found that will really assist in student instruction as well as giving information to the students that the teacher would like for them to have. This is always one of the centers of topics, I should say, from parents and from people coming by in the community. They say, how come those windows are turned crooked? And you can see from just what you see here is that they have a real unique, they add a real unique flavor to the school and the design of the school. And the architects are always putting some little thing into the buildings that are pretty much their idea, and this is one of them right here. You can see the different type of setup on the lighting, and you can see the roof design. And in many of our classrooms, that roof design is continued. They're getting ready to level out our library in terms of the reading levels of the books, and kind of show you, even though it's not been unpacked, but this library is beautiful. Actually quite large in terms of comparison to the last two middle schools, to the Evans and Oak Hill. And Mrs. Barnes will be taking care of this. We're waiting for the library service folks to come out and help us with the books. This is something that we've kind of nicknamed, if you look down this is This is the highway. We call this hallway the highway, and you can look at it, and even though we didn't put this in and didn't intend for it to be this way, you can see that the tile and design of the hallway almost looks like a road coming through here. And our main objective is that this is the road to the high school, because immediately under us is, of course, the library to the new high school. So we tell the kids they're on this road as one of their career moves to get into the high school program. This is what we call the cooking lab, cooking center. And of course she has access to both classroom areas, and this could be going on at one time. In other words, she's able to allow students to work in that with their hands-on sewing things, and then she can come in here and work with the kids and supervise the cooking and things of that nature that's going on too. So she's got an instruction area, what I call a teaching area. She's got a place as what I call a workshop area, and then she also has a place for a lab situation where she's actually giving instruction on cooking.
and we look forward to a lot of participation with them in the future. Thank you very much.
My parents had wonderful legacies. I mean, these things don't just happen by themselves. There are people in our lives, friends, family, teachers, neighbors, who mean a lot, who give and plant seeds of encouragement, of roads to travel that are positive roads. Dad also started a company, but before that, he met Mother at Bosse. They were both Bosse students. I think, Dad, you flipped a coin or something with some guy in the hall, and one gal was Mom to have a date with Mom, and one was for this other lady, and I gotta say, Dad got the better end of the deal. I know the other lady, I'm not mentioning names, but it was, Dad lucked out there. So they met here, and Dad started a company, which is no small feat, to begin with nothing and borrow lots of capital and start your own company and have it be very successful. Colonial Garden Center has been very successful, and now my brother has the company and continues to be successful. The Career Center was a huge thing for Dad to do. My sister and I were both in education. We're educators, and I happened to be at Ben Davis at the time in the guidance department. So Dad and I worked pretty closely together on some of the materials. We shared materials for the center, and it was called Bosse Cares. And it really gave the kids a chance to explore careers, put their interests and abilities together, and come up with some pieces to puzzles that kids don't often have at that age. You know, what could I do? What careers can I pursue? You know, where are my interests and abilities? What am I able to do? And there's nothing better than empowering a student.
It's a great time to see all of you. We've been friends over the years. I enjoyed doing what we did, and I hope that it carries on from here. And the people that backed up what we were doing were very helpful, and I got a big kick out of it, and it worked smoothly. And now here I've got all of the famous people for schooling right here in this room, and I appreciate that, and thank you very much.
We are certainly very, very thrilled to rename this media center after someone whose family has given so diligently and earnestly to our community, and in particular to the Bosse community. And so we will forever be grateful to your family for all that you have done. And with that, at this particular point in time, we are asking that everyone move out to the front of this media center for its formal dedication.
It's great for Bosse anytime we get any public attention about all the positive things we're doing, because if we are an institution that's been around since the 20s, our history is important, the dedication that these folks have given us as a school is important, and for me as the media specialist, it's just reminding people how important this room is, and this is the center of the school, and this should be the heartbeat or the life of the school. And it's a way for me to relate to students all the work that has gone on before them to make our school important and make our building important and our room, the media center, important.
Hi, my name is Sagan March, a Bosse reporter for the EVSE Community Link. I am here today at the Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial located near Lincoln City, Indiana. The Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial is a great adventure that families all over southern Indiana will enjoy. My guide today will be Mr. Mike Capps, who is the chief interpreter of the park. We will be discussing Abraham Lincoln and his journeys throughout southern Indiana. The park is open 6 months out of the year, starting in mid-April and ending in mid-September. The state park was first opened in 1962. Now let's begin our tour. Hi, Mr. Capps.
Hello.
How are you today?
I am fine. How are you?
Just wonderful. So you're chief interpreter of the park. So what are your roles or your responsibilities in the park?
Basically, I'm responsible for all of the visitor services here at the park. So the visitor center, where folks generally start their visit, come in for basic orientation, general information about the park, to the Living Historical Farm, where most people end up going as part of their visit. I give guided tours. I'm responsible for the rest of the staff that does guided tours as well. We provide school programs, especially this time of year. We have a lot of school groups that come through. So really, anything having to do with visitor services here at the park is part of what I'm responsible for.
What is the Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial's purpose, and how does it affect Southern Indiana?
The park exists because this was the area where Abraham Lincoln lived for 14 years of his life. We have a portion of his father's original farm within the park boundaries here. There are other features of the park that were developed early on by the state in an effort to commemorate or to preserve Nancy Hanks Lincoln's gravesite, that of his mother, and to preserve areas like the cabin site memorial. And what we do here is we basically tell the story of Lincoln's time here in Indiana and how that formative period in his life affected the development of his personality and his character. This is the primary site in Indiana associated with Lincoln. We also happen to be the first national park in Indiana. The park was established here in 1962. And so it's a key part of the Lincoln story. He was born in Kentucky, of course, moved here at the age of 7, lived here until he was 21, at which time he moved on to Illinois. It tends to be the lesser known chapter in his life. There is not as much documentation and evidence of this time period in his life, so that's a bit of a challenge for us, but it's really a pretty key part of the story because many of the things that we are familiar with from his later life really kind of have their origins in this time. Lincoln did not have the beard until 1860. He began to grow the beard when he was running for election, running for president. See, there had been some photographs taken of him without the beard, but I mean, in that day and age, it wasn't as easy to get photographs of people as it is now. And so a lot of times, photographs that were taken were used over and over again by different publications and newspapers and stuff. But once he began to grow the beard, they didn't have any new photographs of him with the beard, so they just took the old photographs and they added the beard.
So, when is the best time to visit the park?
Spring and summer is our typical peak visitation period. We only staff the farm through the spring and the summer, so that's what draws a lot of people here in the first place. The park is open year-round, however. The visitor center is open every day except Christmas, Thanksgiving, and New Year's. We're here, so people can still come in and see the exhibits, watch the movie, walk the park grounds, that kind of thing.
So you do guided tours for all different type of people in Southern Indiana and also from Kentucky, Illinois, or wherever they may come from. Do you let the visitors explore on their own, or is it strictly guided tours?
No, it's largely self-guided. We staff the information desk and we give people an orientation to the park when they get here. But from that point on, primarily they're on their own to explore the park however they would like to do. Now, during the summertime, we will try to offer guided programs and guided tours at specific times of the day. That schedule varies a lot of times depending upon staffing and other factors. But primarily, most people explore the park on their own. They'll look around through the visitor center here, and then they'll walk up the trail and go on up to the farm and just kind of, do it at their pace and whatever aspects of it most interest to them. So what we've done is we've recreated what we think is a relatively period-correct farm with a cabin and associated outbuildings as a means of talking about the frontier experience that Lincoln lived through and how that experience, what part that played in the development of his personality and his character and that sort of thing. The Living History Farm is then a tool that we can use to talk about that frontier experience in a more tangible, kind of a three-dimensional type way for folks to see, some of the typical kinds of chores that would have gone on during the day, to get an idea of what kinds of crops Thomas Lincoln would have been growing, just to get a better feel for what life would have been like, and then hopefully gain a better understanding of how that experience shaped Lincoln himself.
If you could describe the park in one word, what word would you describe it as?
I would think unique would be the word, for a couple of different reasons. Primarily because it does represent this lesser known chapter of Lincoln's life. But then there are a lot of aspects of it that are somewhat unique. The memorial building with the sculptured panels and the various things that have been done here. You're not going to find this kind of stuff anywhere else. So it's a lot of people, when they come here, are genuinely surprised to find, first of all, that Lincoln had been in Indiana, but secondly, that there is this park and that there are these facilities here to commemorate that fact that he lived here.
The Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial is a great adventure that families all over southern Indiana will enjoy. Reporting for the EVSC Community Link, I am Sagan March.
This has been a Bulldog production.